Today we're going to talk about the second part of sight or vision. So in your eye you have a structure called the lens. It's a biconvex crystal-like structure. So biconvex means that it bows out on both sides, and it's held in place by a suspensory ligament that's attached to that muscle, that's smooth muscle called the ciliary body. In this image you can see the lens, so that's that structure right there, and then you can see the ciliary body, and that's the muscle that is on both sides of the lens, so that you can change the shape of the lens so that you can focus on things that are at different focal lengths. Lenses can be affected by age. Sometimes people get something called cataracts, and that's when the lens becomes hard and opaque, meaning that less light can go through it with age, and vision becomes hazy if people have cataracts, or distorted, and it can eventually cause blindness in the affected eye. You can have cataract surgery where they can replace the lens with something that is clear so that you can see and focus on things again. And risk factors for cataracts include diabetes, frequent exposure to sunlight, and heavy smoking. So here in this image you can see someone's got a cataract, and you can see how cloudy the lens is and how that would obscure vision. Your eye has two different segments or chambers. There's the anterior or aqueous segment that's anterior to the lens, so that means that it's on the frontmost part of your eye, like when you're looking at an eyeball, and it contains something called the aqueous humor. And then the posterior or vitreous segment is posterior to the lens or behind the lens, and it contains the vitreous humor. So here you can see the anterior segment of the eye is here, and it includes or contains the aqueous humor. And then you can see the posterior part of the eye, and that contains the vitreous humor. The aqueous humor in the anterior segment is a watery fluid, and it's found between the lens and the cornea. It's similar to blood plasma as far as composition, and it helps to maintain the intraocular pressure, because you want to have a certain amount of fluid in your eye, because otherwise it will not stay round, but too much is not a good thing either, because it puts too much pressure on the eyeball. It provides nutrients to the lens and the cornea, and it's reabsorbed into venous blood through something called the scleral venous sinus, or the canal of Schlemm. The vitreous humor is a slightly different type of liquid. It's more gel-like in its kind of viscosity, and it's posterior to the lens. It helps to prevent the eye from collapsing, and also helps to maintain, like the aqueous humor, the intraocular pressure within your eye. When you go to the doctor, it's possible you've experienced an ophthalmoscope. It's the instrument used to illuminate the interior of the eyeball, and it allows doctors to detect things like diabetes, atherosclerosis, degeneration of the optic nerve, and the retina. When you look through an ophthalmoscope, you can see the fovea centralis, the blood vessels that are on the eye, and the optic disc, for example, and then things like the retina. Next, we'll talk about kind of the physics of how an eye sees. So light must be focused to a point on the retina for optimal vision. The eye is set like naturally. You see best when things are about 20 feet away or further. If something is closer to you than 20 feet, you do something called accommodation. And that's when the lens in your eye changes shape in order to focus on objects that are closer than 20 feet away. So here you can see what accommodation would look like, right? So if you have a distant light source, you're looking at something far away, the lens is shaped kind of just an oval shape, and then it changes shape if you're looking at something that is closer than 20 feet. You can see that the lens becomes deeper in order to focus that light on the retina. The image formed on the retina is what was called a real image. So a real image is defined as something that is reversed from left to right, it's upside down, and it's smaller than the actual object that you're looking at. So for example, if you were looking at a picture of the letter J, what you see on the wall appears on your retina as upside down and reversed. Nerves from your eyes go to both the right and left hemisphere of the brain. So the optic chiasma is located where the optic nerves cross, and fibers from the medial side of each eye cross over to the opposite side of the brain. So the structure allows nerves to connect from your right eye to the left side of your brain, and from your left eye to the right side of the brain. And then other structure are called optic tracts, and they contain fibers from the lateral side of the eye on the same side and medial side of the opposite eye. So here you can see how those nerves are laid out in your eyes. So you've got your left eye and your right eye. They both have nerves that travel back towards the brain. The optic chiasma is where some of the nerves from the right side go to the left side of the brain, and some of the nerves from the left side go to the right side of the brain. And then the optic tract stays on the same side. So these are some of the nerves from the lateral side of the eyeball that travel to from the right eye to the right side of the brain, and the left eye to the left side of the brain. This diagram also shows where field of vision is for each of your eyes. So there's some parts of your vision that are only visible by your right eye. There are some that are only visible by your left eye. And then you have what's called binocular vision, which is what allows you to have depth perception, where the two fields of vision overlap with each other. Just like your skeletal muscle, your eyes also have reflexes. So you've got internal muscles, and they're controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So if, for example, you're exposed to a really bright light, that causes the pupils to constrict or get smaller through the action of the radial, circular, and ciliary muscles. And then viewing close objects also causes automatic accommodation. So that changes the shape of the lens so that you can view things that are closer than 20 feet to your eye. Then you have external muscles, and they control eye movement to follow objects. So that's what allows you to, like watch a squirrel run across your yard or something like that. Viewing close objects causes what's called convergence. So that's when your two eyes move so that they're both looking more medially. Of course, taken to an extreme, that's what being cross-eyed is, right? Normal vision is called emmetropia. So that's when eyes focus images correctly on the retina. Many people, though, struggle with vision, so they've got glasses or contacts to help correct things. Myopia, or nearsightedness, means that distant objects appear blurry. Light from those objects fails to reach the retina, and they're focused in front of the retina, so just in the middle of the vitreous humor, and that prevents you from seeing that image clearly. This results from an eyeball that is a little bit too long from the anterior to posterior ends. The opposite of myopia is hyperopia. That's when you're farsighted. And so in this case, near objects are blurry and distant objects are clear. Distant objects are focused behind the retina or beyond where the retina ends. And so this results from an eyeball that is too short, or if you have a lazy lens that doesn't want to accommodate enough to make a sharp image. So an emmetropic eye is one that focuses correctly, and you can see that the point of light is focused right on the retina. If you have a myopic eye, someone who's nearsighted, the light tends to focus to a point before it hits the retina, and that means that you can't see the image clearly. And if someone is hyperopic, that means they're farsighted. The image focuses too far behind the retina, and so again, you don't have a sharp image. Those two different conditions can be quite easily corrected with a corrective lens, whether it's glasses or contacts. So to correct the myopic eye, you need a concave lens to change where the light focuses. And if you have a hyperopic eye, then you need a convex lens to change where the light focuses. Another thing that can cause vision problems is something called an astigmatism. This causes images to be blurry, and it results from light focusing as lines rather than points on the retina, and it's because the cornea or the lens in your eye has an unequal curvature, so it's not a smooth curvature across the whole surface of the lens or the retina, or the cornea. Other things that can affect eyes includes light blindness. This is when you have inhibited rod function. Remember, those are the ones that allow you to see in low light and with peripheral vision. So if you have inhibited rod function, sometimes you can't see as well at night. Color blindness, like we talked about before, is a genetic condition, and it results in the inability to see specific colors, and it's because someone is missing one of the types of cone cells that allow you to see the different wavelengths of light. And then cataracts are when lenses become hard and opaque, and that causes vision to become hazy and distorted. Another way that eyes can be affected negatively is something called glaucoma. It causes blindness if it's untreated, and is caused by an increasing pressure within the eye. So the fluid inside of the eye exerts too much pressure on the eye itself. And then the last homeostatic imbalance we'll talk about is hemianopia, and that's the loss of the same side of the visual field in both eyes. So it's limiting your field of vision, and it's caused by damage to the visual cortex in the brain.